everyone, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time to my channel, my name is Jess, and normally I bring 2 videos based on makeup, whether they're tutorials or reviews on makeup. I bring those kinds of videos to you guys. Today I'm going to be focusing on a totally different style of video, and that is my mental health story. This will probably be a bit of a longer video just because I want to touch on a lot of things, but if you would like to hear about my mental health story, then please keep on watching. I do want to put a disclaimer in here just because I feel like it is the internet and I'm putting myself out there in this. I'm really sharing a big part of myself with you guys, so disclaimer. I'm going to be talking about medication, I'm going to be talking about talk therapy, and I'm going to be talking about mental mood disorders and things going on in my brain. If you don't agree with talk therapy, if you don't agree with medication, if you think I'm fine, if you think I'm lying, if you think I'm doing this to seek attention, if you think that I've made all of these things up and they're in my head, they are in my head, but I didn't make them up. Any of those things, don't watch this video. This video isn't for you. This video is hopefully to help someone else out there. Even if there is stuff wrong with you, like there's nothing wrong with you. Like you're not abnormal. Like you're going to be okay even if you're not okay. That's who this is for. If you disagree with taking medication and talk therapy and you leave a nasty comment, I'm gonna delete the comment, and if you keep going, I'm gonna block you. This is a healthy, safe space where I will have an open dialogue with you guys, hopefully in the comments, and I would love feedback. I'd love to talk to you guys, but only positivity here. So before I really jump into things, I want to talk about a company that I'm partnering with for this video, and that is the company called BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online therapy program, and they're basically perfect for people who want to start working with a therapist and having someone to talk to, but maybe you live remotely or you can't afford traditional therapy. BetterHelp is significantly more cost effective, and it doesn't rely on you being able to make it to maybe a doctor's office. So I have a link down below if you want to check them out. I think it's an amazing resource, and as someone who definitely suffers from anxiety and depression and all of those things, and hasn't always had the best luck as far as having money around, it's definitely important to know that there are options for you even if traditional therapy doesn't feel like an option. There are new routes to take, and that's why BetterHelp is awesome. So my mental health journey has been a very long one, and I'm kind of going to start you back to when I was around 12, 13, and I started noticing that there was something kind of off about me. I was definitely a quiet child, and I loved playing by myself, being by myself. I was very quiet around other children. I've always been like a homebody, loving being in my own room and reading or playing with dolls when I was younger. So that was definitely an inclination growing up that there was something kind of different about me. So at around age 12, 13, where a lot of changes are going on as far as hormones and puberty, I started having a lot of problems with anxiety and depression. And my pediatrician talked to me about going on a mood medication. And because I had a really good family history of using Prozac, I was prescribed a small amount of Prozac to give a try. So mind you, I was probably in like 7th, 8th grade at this point. So in middle school was hell. I mean, I don't really think that anyone goes through middle school and is like totally comfortable with the experience. I went on that little bit of Prozac, and I found within the first 6 months that it was not for me. It was giving me migraines, it was giving me symptoms that I didn't like, so I decided to go off of it. I then was prescribed a low amount of Zoloft, and I didn't react well to that either, so for a while I kind of hopped off of pills. Around the age of 14 though, I realized that the problems weren't going away. In fact, they were getting harder to manage, and that was being reflected in my school life and my personal life and my home life ultimately. So I started going to a therapist. Now, I was given a luxury, you know, I was being listened to. My parents, they could tell something was wrong and that I really did need to speak to someone because, you know, parenting wasn't enough. The medicine didn't work. I needed to go talk to someone. I am fully aware to this day, you know, even into my 20s, how privileged I am to be able to afford these things. And there are so many people out there who can't afford to go and sit down and talk with a therapist, but ultimately, if it is something that you feel like you need to do, something like BetterHelp is amazing because you can really dip your toes into the pool of therapy and talk therapy, cognitive therapy, all of those kind of aspects. And even if you're not comfortable like face to face, you can pick up the phone with someone, you can text. So I think that that is really amazing, and it's something that I would have really enjoyed, I think, at that age as well. But at 14, I started traditional talk therapy. I didn't get along well with the first therapist that my parents sent me to, and I remember that because I remember just being so annoyed with her. Like, she didn't get me. Like, no one would get me. And that's the so classic teenage kind of thing. Like, ugh, no one understands. But in my case, we didn't mesh well personality-wise. I kind of felt like she was always, the way she would phrase questions was almost blaming in a sense, like, oh, well, why do you think you do things that way? And it just didn't sit right with me, so I ended up going to someone else. This next person that I went to in the same probably 6-month period was better. She was cool, she was funny, she had a great sense of style, and at 14, I really had a hard time making friendships. So the fact that I got to talk to someone regularly who was cool and interesting and like a successful adult made me feel kind of good. And she and I even would talk about like punk and goth music because that's what I was really interested in. So it felt like for the first time I was really being heard. And if you're watching this thinking like how depressing, you didn't really have any friends and you weren't connecting with your parents, so you connected with your therapist, I mean, it is what it is. I was a very quiet kid, and other people in my school thought I was weird, and I don't know, it was my first taste of someone taking me seriously and feeling like they wanted to talk to me. And I know I was paying them, but you get the point. What I would inevitably come to realize is that she actually didn't really help me. Like, she didn't help me through major problems. It was more that I so enjoyed spending time with her that I couldn't tell that I wasn't getting any better. And I did realize that later on, but I'll get to that in a second. My therapist that I had now successfully found had me do a psych evaluation. Now, psych evaluations aren't all the same, and I'm not 100% sure what kind she gave me, but I do know that the book that she used is the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So that's the book that was used, and it is still being used, it's just updated. And the questions were very interesting as far as, you know, what you're supposed to think of certain things, and I guess all of those answers culminated in being able to say what my brain was sort of making of this life. We sort of found out that I had a number of different things. I had generalized anxiety disorder, which it's just your anxiety. It's the fact that there is anxiety in the world and everyone has it. And then GAD is kind of like the Mac Daddy. It's like there's always anxiety present in the brain. It's never gone. Even if you don't feel anxious, there's a low-level anxiety that just exists. And that is something that over the past 11 or so years, I really have struggled with. And I don't really think that it matters what medicine I'm on or what kind of talk therapy I'm allotted. I think that ultimately it's just always gonna be present, and it's that low-level presence. So it will spike, it'll get crazy, it'll get horrible and gross and terrible, but it will always be that low level. It's the ever-present omnipotent anxiety. I also had MDD, which is major depressive disorder, also known as depression. Depression is really commonplace in society right now, which is good because that means that a dialogue has started and can really form properly, but depression isn't feeling sad. Depression isn't a temporary thing. Depression is onset. Depression is a space that you go into where you can't be pulled out from. It's the darkest place in your mind. It's all-consuming. It is the gray cloud, the gray storm cloud of the brain. And like anxiety, my depression has never gone away. These are chemical imbalances in my brain. So now I'm kind of remembering, I'm jogging my memory a little bit more, and I'm remembering that the psych evaluation came from what was a suicide attempt. I don't remember if it was my first one, second, or third. I'm not gonna go into those because I don't feel like they ultimately tell you a great deal about my mental health story. I have struggled with suicide plenty in the past. Obviously, I have been, completely unsuccessful at it, thank goodness. It's very hard for me to talk about it, and I don't wish to. I want you to know that it's something I struggle with still to this day, and hopefully I don't struggle with it forever, but I'm also prepared that I might. And that's kind of one of those things that if you have depression, you'll understand that it just goes into a file in the back of your head and you try not to think about it. But educational purposes, I have really struggled with that. If you or a loved one struggle at all with depression and you are having suicidal thoughts, please know you are important, you are amazing, and you deserve to be here, deserve to live this life, and you are not alone. I will leave a link down below to the suicide hotline. Know that you are not alone. If you have no one else out there, you have me. You have me, and you can private message me on Instagram, or you can use my email, my professional email down below. There is no one out there that is truly alone. So call the suicide hotline, call someone, anyone. You are important, you matter, and everything that you are is important. After that psych evaluation, I started on the medication Lexapro. Lexapro was the first real experience that I had long-term with a mood medicine, and I don't know enough about these medicines, unfortunately, to be like, this one was an SSRI, and this one was like a hybrid, and there's so much changing about medicine. I don't honestly know what everything is specifically. I've been on antidepressants, I've been on SSRIs, I've been on Abilify, which I think like boosts other medicines, so I don't really know enough about the chemical compounds and all of that. At this point, I was really starting to struggle with eating disorders, and that can be a whole other video if you want to talk about eating disorders and body positivity and all that good stuff. Leave a comment down below if you want a kind of video like that. I'm more than willing to do that, but I started struggling with that because my weight has always been a very weird, touchy subject for me, and going on a medicine that made me gain weight was like, oh my god, I don't care how good I ever feel, how did I gain all of this weight? This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Keep in mind, 15 years old, literally super duper thin, and then all of a sudden like blew up like a balloon. So just keep that in mind, like that's gonna F with anyone's mental health on top of their already stressful mental health problems. While I was on Lexapro, I was realizing that my depression was being handled though, and that was really important, and I stopped having so many suicidal thoughts. I was able to go through my day without feeling like I was drowning all the time, and that was really amazing, but I didn't feel like Lexapro really addressed my anxiety. So I went on a medicine called Klonopin. I was taking both, and Klonopin I was taking, I can't remember my dosage, but I was taking one in the morning and one at night, and I took my Lexapro in the morning with that first Klonopin pill. I found that Klonopin, while it started working, it just kind of ended up working, and then plateauing. So I ended up having to up my dosage a couple of times. I very quickly realized that I was becoming addicted to the drug, and that I just kept taking more and more even if I didn't need it, because it made me feel kind of zombified, and it made me so mellow that I loved it. I loved feeling mellow. Imagine if you are having your heart pounding and you're constantly feeling like you're on the edge of the cliff and someone is about to push you, and that's just your constant state of being, and then taking a medicine where you just feel chill, just feel nice and calm, and everything's okay. And nothing is good, nothing is bad, everything is just like, everything just is. Wouldn't you want that as well? So I got addicted to it, and I did have to wean off, and that was absolute hell. I have been on it since, and weaning off of Klonopin, really any benzos, are shit. It's so hard. You honestly go through such terrible withdrawals, and if you don't need it, don't take it. That's all I'm gonna say. Also, should be noted, all of the medications I've been on have been monitored by a doctor. You have to be able to trust your doctor, but you also have to be able to trust your own instincts, and if you feel horrible on a medicine, you need to tell someone. You need to make everyone aware, and you can't just think like, okay, I just need to get through this and then it'll get better. that's not always the case. Sometimes yes, but sometimes if you get even worse, that's not okay. You need to be okay. I personally made the mistake of not seeing a real psychiatrist until I was 16. I had my pediatrician prescribe a lot of these things for me. So having a psychiatrist monitor all of these things was a good decision, but I picked the wrong one. She ended up not giving me what I needed, and that was kind of cataclysmic to my mental health, but unfortunately, you really have to shop around for doctors and find a balance that works. I mean, it took me over 10 years to find one, and while that might be very depressing, it is my situation, and I have found a good combination right now. So I guess what I'm saying is it's out there, but you have to know that you might have to shop around for that. Around 16, I realized that my therapist was doing me no good. We were having great conversations, and she was rad as hell, but she was not helping me with my mental health. So I ultimately left her, and my personal and school life had gone to poop. So it was clear that what was going on was not working for me, so I got a new therapist. That therapist is the one that I am with now, and she is honestly one of the most important people in my life, and I have no shame in saying that to you because she is kick-ass, and she makes me think. Sometimes I leave exhausted from her office, and I like get in the car and I'm just like, ugh. Like I just feel like I did a workout or something, you know. I just feel like heavier or lighter just depending on what we talked about. But it's so important that you feel different, that you can chronicle an improvement, and that you can see that you're growing. You should be growing. Your therapist should not be keeping you in one space. So, and she pushes me. She makes me think about and talk about things that I have no desire to, but that's important. You want someone who's going to address what you need. So from age 17 to 21, I actually went off of my medicine. I was finding that it was just making me tired, it wasn't making me feel better, and that I was okay. Now, in that time period, a lot of really traumatic things happened, and I did pick up panic disorder. So panic disorder is basically having panic attacks a lot, and it's the uglier cousin of anxiety. It's what happens when anxiety runs amok and you do get pushed off of that cliff. Remember that analogy where I'm on the cliff and I'm constantly feel like I'm about to fall? That's the generalized anxiety. Panic disorder is, no, you've been pushed. You are falling off that cliff at breakneck speeds and you're about to go splat. So panic disorder did develop in that time period, but it was spread out enough, and I started having cognitive therapy regularly, like very regularly, like on a routine schedule. So I kind of worked myself around it. I definitely feel like I could have had something, and I definitely had an anxiety medicine like Valium, Ativan, like those kind of things that live in your bloodstream for shorter periods of time. They don't have as long of a half-life as, say, Klonopin does. I would have those around in case I did have a panic attack, and 17 to 21, I had plenty of them, but they didn't stop me from living my life like they did or like they do now. So age 22 to present, I am on antidepressants regularly. I am on the antidepressant Cymbalta. I have no problem telling you guys this because it's been doing really great for me. I told you I did go back to Klonopin in the past year, and that ultimately was not the right decision for me, and pairing that with an antidepressant just felt wrong. It just didn't do what I needed it to. So right now, I'm at a great medication place, actually. I'm taking my Cymbalta, and I also have Ativan. I believe the full name for Ativan is also lorazepam, and that is what does me very well. It has a small half-life in the bloodstream, so if I am feeling terribly anxious, having a horrible panic attack, feel like I can't breathe, like my heart is about to just fall out of my body. Earlier in the year, I did have an issue, and I had a really horrible bout of near suicide, very bad, and my anxiety was through the roof around this time as well, and I had almost like a peanut allergy kind of episode almost where I felt my throat closing up. I'm not allergic to peanuts, by the way. That day I hadn't eaten anything out of the ordinary. I had a relatively like good, fine, normal day. And then around 10 o'clock at night, I just couldn't breathe. I couldn't drink water. Like, I would drink some water and it would barely trickle down my throat. I was hyperventilating because I genuinely thought that my throat was closing up. And I did take an Ativan because I originally thought like, oh, I'm getting really anxious, let me take one. And it typically takes 15 to 20 minutes before I feel the onset and I feel it start helping. So my fiance, he was my boyfriend at the time, my fiance was like, what do you need? What can I do? You're not okay. Like, I was losing color in my lips. I was looking like I was going to pass out. I said, take me to the hospital. So I went to the emergency room, but basically they sat me down and they were like, your blood pressure is normal. Your oxygen levels are fine. Your lungs sound fine. Is it possible that you have anxiety disorder? And I'm like, yeah, I do, but I've never had my throat start closing up. And they were like, oh, well, that can be very normal. Do you take any medications? And I'm like, yeah, I take medication. They're like, maybe you need more. So that's why I went back onto Klonopin, and while it did help me kind of work my way back, Cymbalta for me addresses the depression and the anxiety enough where I don't have to take something in addition. So I guess what I'm saying is I have things for when I need them. I have the Ativan or lorazepam when I need it, but I don't rely on it regularly. I see my therapist weekly, and that is a luxury that I don't know what my life would look like without that. I honestly want to cry a little just thinking about how important that is for me. I don't have amazing personal relationships with my family. And if any of my family is watching this, know that that's not like a dig at you in my life. It's that I don't have the kind of system in place where I can rely on someone for this part of my life. And my therapist does that for me. And I definitely know what it's like to feel really alone, to feel unsafe in your thoughts, unsafe in your body, and being able to talk to someone, even if it's texting or over the phone or video chatting, is so, so important. Feeling like someone is there for you is so important. My mood is relatively okay. I'm very good at what my therapist likes to call the smiling depression. I look fine to a lot of people because I don't like letting people in. That is something of my own demons, but I will front. I will put a facade up that's like, hey, I'm doing fine. What are you talking about? I'm fine. I'm fine. But I'm not. And so if I do have a particularly bad bout of depression or anxiety, a lot of people will be like, oh, but you're fine. Oh, but what do you mean you're depressed? You're fine. And that's a very heavy and potentially toxic statement to say to someone. You don't know what their life is like in here, you know? You know what they present to you and what they tell you about, and saying like, oh, but you're fine, is making them feel like they can't talk to you. Maybe you're who they're looking for as an ally. Maybe you're the person that they're going to be able to reach out to, but by saying, oh, but you're fine, you're dismissing what exists and what they're trying to tell you. So consider that the next time you say, oh, but you look fine. That's what an invisible illness is. Yeah, I look fine. I can walk a straight line. You know, I'm not in a wheelchair. I don't use crutches. I have an able body. That doesn't make me fine. And being dismissive of an invisible illness is kind of where people are so silent and where this is still not being spoken of enough. I have a friend that recently lost a very close relative to depression and suicide. That happens because no one's talking. And if you feel like you're constantly hearing about mental health and advocacy and, you know, allies being out there and all of these body positivity things, know that you're still not hearing enough. You're still not hearing enough because there are still people dying. And that's the honest to God truth, is that we all need to be talking about this kind of thing. So while I'm going through all of these things, I still am able to have a life. I go out, I do things, I exist. And I'm grateful for it every single day, that I am able to be a successful human adult. I still struggle with anxiety more than I would say anything else, because anxiety is something that ebbs and flows. It's easier to track depression. You know, you can kind of rate it on a system, but anxiety for me, I might not wake up anxious, but I'll go to sleep anxious, or vice versa. Anxiety can spike during the day. I'll get triggers. I also will gently touch on the fact that when I was 18 years old, I had a traumatic experience. I'm not going to choose to talk about it, but I do have PTSD, and that's something that makes my anxiety very hard to control. And what that will do is basically put a roadblock in front of me. And so if I'm dealing with anxiety that's general and that's, you know, an overwhelming anxious feeling, my medicine really does help with that, because that's the chemical imbalance. But if there's an external trigger, that is very hard to pull myself back through. And obviously the cognitive therapy helps, but it doesn't ever make it go away. So because of that, it does affect my life. I haven't found a medication that gives me that truly normal life, but I don't know what normal is. I feel like my normal is good enough. My being able to talk to you here through the internet, I have a partner that I love, you know, I am able to have this life, and that's enough for me. So even if I'm not normal to you, I'm normal enough for me. And that's kind of my goal, is to like be normal enough for me. I want to touch on really quickly that I've struggled a lot in the past with having jobs, and in that it's that I will get physically sick from anxiety at jobs. I have really struggled in the past year with jobs, and that is completely related to my anxiety disorder. But that happens, and it's important that your value to yourself is not based on how successful you are, because your anxiety isn't always going to be the same. Your depression isn't always going to be the same. So how you react to it can't always be perfect. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you're at a job right now and it is too much for you, or you just left one, or you're thinking about going back to one, or starting something new, know that sometimes things don't work out. Sometimes you aren't able to do something that someone else is able to do. Sometimes you're not able to sustain what is deemed a normal life by society, and that does not diminish your value as a human being. It doesn't make you less valuable, it doesn't make you less important, and it doesn't make you less successful at being alive. And other people will tell you differently. Your productivity is absolutely connected to your value, and I disagree with that. I don't think that that is true. I think that everyone is different, and if you are in a bad place at a job, if you need to quit, if you need to start something new, if you are thinking about starting something new and you're not sure, know that you have to do what's right for you. And ultimately, money drives all of us, but you have to be okay. You have to take care of yourself. And it took me a long time to figure that one out, and to figure out that I needed to be in the right situation, at the right place, and a space that felt safe to me. One of the things that I will continue to work on is forgiving myself for not being what society needs me to be all of the time. And forgiveness is a very big part of mental health, and sometimes I will break down crying because I am not doing something to the fullest, or I'm not enjoying something that I should be enjoying. The words should and would and could, they're not helpful, because that's not what you're able to do. If I'm not able to enjoy something as much as my partner is because he's mentally fine, that's not something that I don't deserve to berate myself over that. It shouldn't be something that I constantly worry that I'm not going to have as good of a time, or that my experience is lessened because of my mental health. It's not something to bully yourself and beat yourself up over, and we all have that pressure that we're supposed to be living every moment to the fullest. You're just supposed to be alive. You're just supposed to do your best. And so that's why I want to talk about forgiveness as well. And I feel like that's very important, and it is a journey. It is not like a light switch. You don't turn forgiveness on and off. I have not forgiven myself yet for my mental health. I hope that one day I do. I hope that one day I forgive myself for not being able to do certain things, but being enough is such a huge hugely important thing that you need to be for yourself. Sometimes you have to accept that a square peg will not fit into a round hole, and that you're just kind of wasting your energy. You're wasting your energy being upset that you are not something else. I have mental health problems. It's not something to be upset about. And one day I will really truly understand what that means. But I hope that my mental health story has helped literally anyone. Even if one person feels less alone through this video going out there, that means the world to me. And it means that making myself uncomfortable by being this forward and open with you and all of you is worth something. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below if you want to ask any questions or let me know about your mental health. Tell me how your day's going. My day's okay. It's an okay day. I woke up, got a lot of shit done, I showered, I ate, I am dressed, and it's been a productive day. And sometimes that's enough. Being enough. I hope you're all having a good one, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye.